In this chapter, Art Petranek and Keith Minnick explore the Tweetsie right-of-way from Shell Creek, Tennessee to the Cranberry Mine in North Carolina.
Okay, through those woods is the Shell Creek School and the Buck Creek. And here is the highway, what, 19?
19E.
Just below this barbed wire line there. You can just see it there. And then across, you should be able to see that bullpen from the road. And then up there is the right-of-way heading back towards North Carolina. Here is the right-of-way coming through this path right there. Now here's our first cut heading back toward North Carolina. No question about it. Nice curve, nice and level. All kinds of fill, soft fill. Now continuing up toward North Carolina. This was the right of way. And it curves to the right. Okay, here's cut number 2. Okay, we're coming out of the number 2 cut. And here is the right of way. Keith is standing on the right of way, and now we're starting to swing to the left over that fence. Now you can see how gently she's rolling to the left, going upward. Absolutely gorgeous. Again, looking toward North Carolina on the fill area. And steadily uphill she goes. Okay, this is where we came from, the fill area. Got some friendly hound dogs off to the left here. And again, that's where we came from. And although this area has been privatized, definitely the right of way. And the tractor you're looking at was on the other side of this trailer. And here's the right of way. And we're starting to get into some heavy brush up ahead. Been growing over. That brush that we saw from the other side leads into these 2 sheds, which are right on the right of way, which you can clearly see right there. And off in the distance you can hear 19E. You should be able to see those sheds from 19E. And there's the church. There's a continuation of the right of way. Right to the left of these trees. Okay, a little longer distance shot of that. Coming up to here. And there's the church, Keith and 19E. And then at this point here, it looks like they must have filled in, because where we're going would be right straight through a cut up to where that box is. That's too high. Okay. That's Ken's home to the right, and this is where the train came through. And we have now a very deep valley leading over to that concrete wall. And we're told that this was all filled with a tunnel up against that concrete wall. Okay, we're on the other side above the concrete abutment. And we're now, so that's pretty level across there. And there is a concrete abutment. Can't see it, but it's there. Here's the right of way. And there she goes. And there's little question that this is what we're talking about. Looking back from where we came from. Looking forward to where we're going. This is where we come from, and look at the view. Gorgeous. There's 19E down there. And we're starting to head into some bush. See where it leads us. Okay, we're now down to a path. And there it is. But clearly it's still the right of way. And we're heading in the right direction towards the Appalachian Trail. And it's starting to open up a little bit again. Comes Keith. We're going to be scratched to death, Keith.
Yeah.
And more to come. Somewhere off in there is what we're looking for. Got a steep hill up ahead. And this is a view they had from this curve. Okay, this is backwards. And forward to North Carolina. Look at this beautiful curve. Around she goes. Nice beautiful open area. Now it's going to be narrowed down and working our way through another cut. Gotta be a mountaineer. Here's Tweetsie, heading into a cut. And we are very close to 1980. I got a feeling that and right here is where we've got one very large drop-off. I've got to believe that over there somewhere else is the Appalachian Trail. Adjacent to the trail, you can hear the car traffic off to the right. And Keith is walking the right of way. As we continue up now towards what we think is the Greer trestle, there's quite a bit of fill here. You can see this gully being filled in with this, what appears to be the right of way on both sides. And way off in the distance to the left, you can hear the traffic of 19E, so we're not far off from it. And Keith calls this a Kodak moment. Look at that. Cut the way through. We're on the right course. This is looking at that same cutout from the other side. Well, the trail is closing in, but we still think we're on the right path. Still looking for the first trestle. Wait a minute. Keith has just advised us we're back where we started this morning. And where were the trestles? Okay, this is where we came from. And guess what, fans? This is where we're going, and guess what that is? It's a trestle abutment. That's our roadway there. Way up here. Look at the size of this bubble. And I cannot see through the woods to see where it comes out the other side. There's one big truck. It's over there somewhere. This is coming back out towards 19E, south of state line. And this is a state line run. And this is where it comes out to 19E. Guess what, friends? I found the mine. This is where we came in to the mine. That's a little side shaft over there. And here's markings on the walls indicating apparently veins of ore. There's Keith way down there. You see anything?
No, it's all dark. There's one going off the top there too. There's a hole way back in there. Too dark back in there. Huh.
And here's some more markings on the wall.
There's no reinforcing or anything.
Oh, it's just hard rock.
Yeah, that's a road that goes on up. There's another whole cave up in the top there.
These are the details of the marking on the walls, indicating apparently the ore vein that they were digging out. Does that road go out to anywhere over there?
Yes, there's another whole cave up beyond
Up that road.
Yeah.
Is there light coming back through from the other
No,
side? And where does this lower piece go to?
totally dark.
Totally dark. You can't
Goes
see.
into the mountain.
Here's a pretty view. We're coming back out of the mine at this point.
Just a nice little one. That'll be big enough for me.
Kind of
There's
gives
all
you
kinds
perspective
right
on the
here.
entrance. That's what we're looking into right there.
That's real iron ore.
What is it?
This is iron ore, right from the mine.
Down from the mine to what I would assume is a crushing area. These are concrete forms here. They probably dumped the ore from where I'm standing and crushed it and loaded it down below. We still haven't seen the actual railroad track, but they probably had chutes going down to pick up the crushed rock. And there is the foundations for what we assume is the crushers. And we're still looking for the railroad track. And we believe what we're now looking at is the ore furnace. So above that, where we were, was a crusher, and above that was the mine. We're now down at the lowest level, just above the river. And we're thinking that this road here, heading up that way, which Keith is going to walk up, was the actual roadbed for the train. For the train.
Fortunately, the Eastern Tennessee and Western North Carolina Historical Society has an 8mm film showing Tweetsie running from Johnson City, Tennessee and Cranberry, North Carolina. These film segments date from 1943 to 1949. We start showing the Tweetsie backing up on a coal unloading ramp in Johnson City, Tennessee. After picking up passengers at the Johnson City Depot, Tweetsie is on its way to Elizabethton, Tennessee. Note the combination, dual service, wide and narrow gauge tracks in this area. A watering stop at Port Rayon, and the Tweetsie is ready to head into the Blue Ridge Mountains. Notice the end of the wide gauge third rail. From here on, it is narrow gauge tracks only. Outside Hampton, Tennessee, the train passes over the Doe River twice. And into tunnel number 1. Tweetsie now crosses over the Little Doe River at the Hampton Covered Bridge. At the entrance to the Doe River Gorge, Tweetsie passes through tunnel number 2. Approaching Pardee Point in the heart of the gorge, it is always a beautiful stop to enjoy the view. In the upper part of the gorge, Tweetsie is under a full head of steam. Next stop is Roan Mountain. Notice the white-roofed building. This building still exists today. Look for it on Highway 19E. Pulling past the Roan Mountain Depot, the train now heads to Shell Creek. Here is a classic view of the Tweetsie under full power. Elk Park, North Carolina is the next stop. And it's time to reload and polish the brass. Rolling out of Elk Park, the train is on its last leg to Cranberry, North Carolina. Tweetsie is now entering the Cranberry mine area. And here is the Cranberry, North Carolina depot. Within a year of the date of this film, the East Tennessee and Western North Carolina Railroad closed down. It is now the end of an era for the narrow gauge Tweetsie. There is no better way to see the Tweetsie right-of-way than to see it from above. And the AirCam aircraft is just the way to see it. Piloted by Ralph Stewart, we pass over Watauga Lake on our way to Johnson City, Tennessee. In 1882, this was the start of the Eastern Tennessee and Western North Carolina Tweetsie Railroad. Below is the Johnson City Railroad Yard with tracks leading up towards Elizabethton. Here the tracks cross over Highway 321. Curving to the left, ahead is the Bimberg plant that manufactured rayon during World War II. Beyond Elizabethton, the tracks turn to the right, heading toward the Blue Ridge Mountains. From here, all that remains of the Tweetsie is the abandoned right-of-way. All of the narrow-gauge tracks were removed in the 1950s. Between the new bridge and the original bridge on Highway 19E, the train crossed the Doe River and entered Tunnel Number 1. Look for the narrow cut in the tree line as Tweetsie made its way to Hampton, Tennessee. Out of Hampton, the train heads into the beautiful Doe River Gorge. Here is where the Doe River Gorge Ministries and the Tweetsie Historical Society are restoring the tracks through the gorge. A steep climb for over 3 miles, this gorge cut by the Doe River is a beautiful sight to see. Coming out of the gorge is the rural community of Blevins, Tennessee. We're now flying up Railroad Grade Road, parallel to Highway 19E towards Roan Mountain. Next up the road is Shell Creek. Followed by crossing the Tennessee and North Carolina state lines into Elk Park, North Carolina. We're now approaching Cranberry, North Carolina, and the Cranberry Mine. Transporting iron ore from the Cranberry Mine was the primary purpose in building this narrow-gauge railroad back in 1882. The mine is located in that small hill in the center of your view. Now we follow the Linville Railroad right-of-way on our way to Minneapolis, North Carolina. A left turn here, see the green cut through the trees, and we head up the left side of the Tow River. The road under construction on the right side leads to Newland, North Carolina. Outside Newland, Grandfather Mountain majestically rises, and we make our turn to Montezuma. The Tweetsie right-of-way followed the curving road, crossing 5 bridges leading into the 1st and 5th golf fairways in the resort of Linville Land Harbor. Then terminating in Pinola, which at that time was a tourist location for visits to the Blue Ridge Mountains. From Pinola, the Tweetsie backed up to Montezuma and turned eastward towards the town of Linville. The faint S-curve seen was the right-of-way and is now called Old Tweetsie Lane. We're now coming into Linville, North Carolina. The Linville Depot was located to the right of this roadway intersection. The Tweetsie tracks are now in the shadow of Grandfather Mountain, following up Highway 105. Ralph points them out as we make our turn. How is that for a view of Grandfather Mountain? A steady climb gets us to Linville Gap. Then down to Fosco. Then into Shull's Mill. Observe the gravel road in the lower right corner of our view. This is Tweetsie Lane, the original right-of-way from Shull's Mill leading towards Boone, North Carolina. One more climb up to Hodges Gap. Past the open gravel pit mine. And we start our descent into Boone. Here is where the Tweetsie terminated its daily runs into the Blue Ridge Mountains and returned to Johnson City. In its prime, 4 trains ran this 65-mile run each day. Heading back to our base, the Blue Ridge Mountains show their best view. Airport ahead. And we have returned to where we started. Happy landing. The Doe River Gorge, located in the Blue Ridge Mountains of eastern Tennessee, is the beginning of our story, In Search of Tweetsie. In 1882, this narrow-gauge train, built as the Eastern Tennessee and Western North Carolina Railroad Company, initiated service between Johnson City, Tennessee, and Cranberry, North Carolina. It was affectionately later called the Tweetsie because of the shrill sound of its whistle echoing through the hills. In the early years, train service was the only way people could make their way to and from their rural mountain homes.
Want to try some?
But as time went by, roads were built, and the closing of the Tweetsie came in 1950. The entire rail system from Johnson City, Tennessee to Boone, North Carolina, 66 miles in total length, is shown in red on this topography map. A more detailed topography map shows the towns Tweetsie served and the formidable elevations the train had to climb. Starting at Johnson City, these two maps show the train heading east and northeast towards Sycamore Shoals, descending from 1,640-foot elevation to 1,503 feet. Here, some 1940s photographs of facilities and rail equipment. Ahead is Elizabethton and the run to Valley Forge, Tennessee. During World War II, mountain people were carried by the Tweetsie to work at the Bimberg rayon plant. Later, this depot was called Port Rayon. This was the Elizabethton depot in the early 1900s. At 1,710-foot elevation, the Tweetsie now heads to Hampton, Tennessee, and the entrance to the Doe River Gorge at 1,885 feet. Pictures along the way show the covered top-deck bridge crossing the Doe River. The Hampton Depot and the beautiful Hampton Covered Bridge. From the entrance to the gorge, Tweetsie follows the Doe River, going through 4 tunnels and over 2 bridge crossings. Here are views of tunnel number 2. Pardee Point was named after Ario Pardee, who bought the rail system in 1875. This location provides the grandest view of the gorge. The 2 bridges of tunnel number 4 still exist today. The train arrives in Blevins, Tennessee, on the south end of the gorge. Now Tweetsie is on a relatively straight path to Roan Mountain on railroad grade road. And on to North Carolina on State Line Road. Now a public roadway, the right-of-way on Railroad Grade Road is quite beautiful. Coming into the Roan Mountain Depot, the second photograph shows a westbound engine in front of the still existing pharmacy store on Highway 19E. Shell Creek is the next stop, with the abandoned Wilcox Bridge abutment still standing next to Morgan Branch Road. You can walk the Appalachian Trail here right under what was the Greer Bridge leading up to the state line right-of-way. The elevation at the Tennessee and North Carolina state line is 3,182 feet. The gain in elevation from Blevins to the state line is 852 feet. Elk Park, Cranberry, and the Cranberry Mine are our next stops. Here is the Elk Park Depot in the late 1940s. This is the Cranberry, North Carolina Depot. And the excursion trains are picking up people for a Sunday trip to the gorge. This is the Cranberry Mine. At Cranberry, the rail system becomes the Linville River Railroad and climbs over Cranberry Gap on its way to Minneapolis, North Carolina. Following the Tow River, the next stop is Newland. From Newland, a Montezuma switchback leads down to the tourist and lumber areas of Pinola. This is the original Pinola Inn. Backing up from Pinola, Tweetsie turned east toward the town of Linville. And northeast up to Linville Gap, elevation 4,045 feet. The the highest point in the entire rail system. Fosco, North Carolina is downhill with Shulls Mill's lumber mill and depot just ahead. The last big climb is to Hodges Gap and then the downhill run to the Boone, North Carolina depot. Elevation, 3,235 feet. In 1950, the Eastern Tennessee and Western North Carolina Railroad and the Linville River Railroad ceased operations and was officially abandoned. All that remains today in a few locations is the abandoned right-of-way that once provided Tweetsie rail service to the Blue Ridge Mountains. From 1882 to the Depression years of the 1920s. To the war years of the 1940s. And now, into the 21st century, the Eastern Tennessee and Western North Carolina and Linville Railroads has brought thrills to many people.
Trains up through here, and in during World War II they hauled people back and forth with them to work to make parachutes. They all say these trains
Affectionately called the Tweetsie for its shrill-sounding whistle echoing through the Blue Ridge Mountains. This train is now being restored in the Doe River Gorge near the town of Hampton, Tennessee.
To fix the railroad, they put in these concrete walls, this one being the one closest to the track. They're all over the place up this gorge. In 100 years, there's been several pretty good floods that would have done just about as much damage. But these walls were built well, and the railroad has been protected from its course up here. The river's losing. The first half is a lot.
The beauty of this gorge can once again be enjoyed by everyone. Welcome back, Tweetsie. hope you have enjoyed our presentation on In Search of Tweetsie.